Most women would get married faster if they just hold back. Don't give him sex, don't move in with him, don't cook and clean, don't do anything that is wifey duty if he's only giving you girlfriend budget.
That advice is so moronic. No high quality man is going to fall for that. He's not going to invest in something until he knows what he's getting. For the most part, my advice to men is the exact opposite of what she just said. Gentlemen, do not get married to a woman expecting that her behavior is going to be radically different after the wedding. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. If your girlfriend doesn't do any wifely duties for you before you get married, then that's probably not going to change. In fact, it could get even worse because now that she has a legal claim to half of your stuff, she feels even less inclined to do any wifely duties. Certainly, your sex life is going to go down. So that's my default advice that I give to men. If you want femininity in your wife, make sure you can sense that femininity when she's your girlfriend. But isn't saying that a contradiction to something that I've said in previous videos, which is that it's being in a relationship with a masculine man that brings out the femininity in a woman. The basic theory goes like this, that as a single woman, she has a certain amount of practical tasks that she needs to deal with in her life. She's got money issues, she's got planning and scheduling, she's got to make some decisions. In a practical and emotional sense, she has to support herself, and so she's got some masculinity inside her to help with those tasks. But if some great boyfriend comes along who's emotionally secure, he's calm, he's confident, he's masculine, he's able to take on a leadership position in her life and relationship, then she can start to relax that masculinity and sink more deeply into her femininity. All those masculine responsibilities that she was holding, she can put that weight down. She doesn't need to do all the planning and scheduling. She doesn't need to make all of the decisions. Now she can trust in the competence of the high quality man that she's in a relationship with. In so doing, her masculinity fades and her femininity rises. This is the basic theory, and that's why I've said in other videos that it's being in a relationship with you, a high quality masculine man, that's going to bring out her femininity. So despite what I said earlier in the video, I 100% stand by this. A good woman being in a relationship with a good man is going to become more feminine over time. Your masculinity is going to draw that out of her. And of course, it works in the opposite way as well. Like as a single man, you have to attend to a lot of the matters of life with your own femininity. But when you're in a relationship with a girl, you can kind of pass that off to her. It's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about relationships, because I love that masculine, feminine polarity. I just think relationships are such a fantastic vehicle for self-growth and discovery. But then how do I reconcile this with the advice that I gave earlier in the video, which is that if you want a feminine wife, then you need to make sure that she's a feminine girlfriend. If she's going to become more feminine over time, then maybe it doesn't really matter how things start off, if she's really masculine or whatever it might be, because I'll bring that femininity out of her. There is actually a certain amount of truth to that, and I apologize that this stuff is not often straightforward. It's not black and white. Like this rule applies and it's always this way. No, there are some circumstances where you actually want to see some masculinity in your girlfriend. That's actually a good sign. From what I've seen recently in my Hey Hero requests, too many men are panicking at the first sign of masculinity in the girl they just started dating. And it's for these guys that are making this video. This is usually the type of topic that I say for Patreon, where I can go into a lot more of the depth and nuance than I do here on YouTube. But I want to give it a shot because I feel like a lot of guys need to understand this. But before we start unpacking all of that, I want to take a moment to talk about the sponsor of today's video. 2023. It is a brand new year, time to start fresh and kick bad habits that you know aren't good for you. For me personally, I was spending way too much time on Reddit on my phone, but I didn't find that closing the app was simply enough because inevitably I would still pick up my phone. So what I did was I downloaded a CBT app, so I've got something to look at. Now it gives me helpful tips and advice throughout the day. Fume, the sponsor of today's video, works like that, swapping a negative habit for a positive one. Fume is a natural diffusive device that uses plants and behavioral science to help you kick bad habits. The cores do not contain any harmful chemicals, okay? Fume uses cores infused with natural plants like peppermint and cinnamon for delicious flavors. Check it out. The product is beautiful. It's really high quality. It's fun to hold. It's weighted. It makes these awesome twisty, clicky noises. It's very tactile. The flavors taste awesome too. I've been hitting up the crisp mint. Have a look at all of these 5-star reviews from their website. People love this product. So head to tryfume.com/Alexander and use the code AlexanderGrace for 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. The Journey Pack comes with 3 unique flavors and the new version 2 Fume to help kickstart your positive habits. Okay, so we've established that as long as you're taking care of business as a man, being masculine, demonstrating those leadership qualities, being strong, competent, all of that stuff, your girlfriend is going to become more feminine over time. That's guaranteed. But taking that to the extreme, does that mean that it's okay to date a woman who is 100% masculine when you meet her in the dating market? Can you just sit back and be confident like, that's not going to stay. That's not going to permanently be that way. I'll change her. My masculinity is going to bring out the femininity. Definitely not. You can't afford to be cocky and overconfident about this stuff. If you want femininity in your partner, then you should be looking for that in the dating market. But you need to appreciate that there's a difference between a woman's inherent personality characteristic and what she's adopted as a sort of temporary problem-solving mechanism as part of her personality. What I mean to say is that if you're sensing masculinity inside the woman, is that actually her core identity, that she's a masculine person? Or is she just temporarily masculine because she's a single woman, she needs to get stuff done, but her core identity really is a deep femininity? A lot of men are panicking at any sign of masculinity, but what I want to explain is that if you meet a single woman in the dating market and she has that temporary structure of masculinity that just helps her get stuff done, that's actually a good sign. You don't need to run away from that. It's highly appropriate for single women to have a little bit of masculinity. If you met a woman who had 100% femininity, I would say that's a red flag. She's not going to have any standards, any capacity to make decision, no discernment. When she's presented with options of different men in the dating market that she could date, if she's just 100% feminine and submissive and she's incapable of actually discerning which guy is better than which other guy, then she's just going to go with the one who has the strongest frame, and he could be a loser or he could be abusive. If you get together with a girl, you want her attraction to you to be based on her femininity, responding to all those qualities as a woman, bringing it out, and it's like, yes, that's what makes me feel. But you want the decision of hers to act on those feelings to be an expression of her masculinity. Like, yeah, I choose you, and I confidently do so. I'm not just, feminine and submissive and go along with any man who will have me. I recognize that there was something special about you. You're unique. You are a high quality man. And so I have jumped in. That's entirely appropriate to that situation. And it's a sign of a high quality woman that she knows when it's time to bust out a bit of her masculine side and when it's the right time to put it down. The reason why a lot of women who are in happy marriages, happy relationships, and have been for a couple of decades or more, the reason why they seem really, really feminine is not because they're completely devoid of masculinity. It's because it's lying dormant. They don't need to use it. They found a good man. They trust him. They trust his competence. He's been making the right decisions for years and he's leading their family in the right direction. She's like, all right, great. I don't have to do that. I don't particularly like being masculine anyway. It's not fun for me. I'm a woman. I prefer to be feminine. So that's what you see. But that same woman, 20 years ago, when she wasn't in a relationship, she's in the dating market trying to discern which men are losers, which ones are high quality, who's going to have the right values. That's appropriate for her to have some masculinity so she can figure out what she needs. It's actually a good sign if a woman, when you first hit on her, is a little bit standoffish. She's throwing you out some shit tests because it's proof that the girl has some standards. She wants a high quality guy. And so she's going through the process of weeding out the men who aren't going to make the cut. A lot of men, quite frankly, are just too sensitive about this. They feel personally offended if the woman's sitting across from them on the first date asking some tough questions. He's thinking, oh God, it's no fun to be grilled like this. I don't want to have a marriage where I'm constantly being interrogated. He doesn't realize that the masculinity that he's sensing from her is actually situation specific. It's not going to be there all the time. The test is this, which is whether or not it fades over time. I could say it like this. Probably the time in your relationship where you're going to be sensing the most masculinity in your partner is at the very beginning, because she doesn't know you. She needs to put you through some tests to see if you meet her standards. That's okay. It's a problem if her masculinity is increasing over time. It's because she doesn't trust you. She doesn't value your masculinity. That's not what she's looking for. She's not confident enough to actually relax into her own femininity. So that's a problem. Break up with her. Find somebody better suited. But if her masculinity fades over time, after a month, it's less. After 6 months, it's even less. After 2 years, it's barely even there. That's a good sign. And you see that if you'd gotten, really panicked on those first couple of dates, being like, oh, this girl's so masculine, you panicked over nothing. I keep seeing this in my Hey Hero requests, a bunch of guys panicking over small amounts of masculinity they're sensing from women in the dating market, thinking this is the end of the world and there's no femininity left in women. No, understand that pure, amazing, beautiful expression of femininity that we love to see, you only really see that in its purest form for women who are in relationships already. And even then, it's only really her boyfriend that gets to see that. Like, I would consider my partner to be a very feminine woman, but I get the most pure expression of her femininity when she's out in the world. It's not like she's feminine and submissive to any guy that comes along. If some chump was like puffing up his chest and trying to convince her of some nonsense, she'd see right through it and she'd probably say so. Like, I love that she wouldn't get outsmarted. Like, that's a nice expression of her masculinity. And it makes it even more pleasurable that I don't get that kind of attitude inside my relationship, you know, and it's proof that she's feminine and it's a femininity that's specific to me. The way I like to put it is that those femininity credits, they don't transfer. And so when you really understand this stuff, you can begin to appreciate that it's not necessarily the degree of femininity or the masculinity inside your partner that's anything to be concerned about. It's about the integrity of the woman and her ability to display either femininity or masculinity correctly according to those circumstances. Is she adaptable? Can she adjust to the situation? That's what's most important. What I'm worried about is that there's a bunch of men who are so panicked about the idea of being in a marriage with a masculine woman who doesn't value them, who challenges their leadership, who's trying to compete with them, that they think that the only surefire solution against that nightmare scenario playing out is to try and find a woman in the dating market who's 100% feminine and 100% submissive. That's not going to work. You need to get rid of your idea about a relationship starting from a point of perfection. The masculine-feminine dynamic that you're going to have inside your relationship in 10 years' time shouldn't be present at the start of your relationship. It hasn't been earned. It hasn't been created. So when judging women as future partners, don't just blindly look at the amount of femininity. Actually consider what potential is there in that femininity, and look at her masculinity and ask, is this inherent to her character or is this just something temporary? And never forget your own role in creating that femininity inside her. Like, yes, you want to find a woman who's got femininity potential when you start to date her, but what you should be seeing is that it's through your masculinity and your competence that her femininity is able to rise every single year. That's how this stuff works, and hopefully you've connected the dots here and you can see that if you date a perfectly feminine, 100% submissive girl who was that way from the beginning of a relationship, it's not going to stay that way if you're slacking off, if you're not fulfilling your role, your masculine role in the relationship, because there's a certain amount of shit that just needs to get done. Somebody needs to step up, take responsibility, assume authority, take the leadership helm. If you're not doing it, even if you found a girl who's perfectly feminine and submissive from the start, if you're not stepping up, she's going to have to. And so it's not going to work anyway. There is no perfect personality or perfect amount of femininity that's going to protect against you being a moron later on and not being masculine enough. I have so much data on this. So many men have contacted me saying, I was too much of a pushover in my relationship. I was too feminine, too submissive. I just did whatever she wants because I thought that that was my duty. And then she basically looked at me one day and said, I don't understand the point of you. Like, why do I need you? I'm fulfilling the male role in the relationship anyway. You're like dead weight. I'm casting you off. And they're devastated because they thought they were doing what was right. And then they come to my channel, they learn about this stuff and they go, I see what I was doing wrong. So get onto it, get to work, start developing that masculinity. Once you're absolutely confident in your own masculinity, you're not going to feel so threatened by the appearance of a little bit of masculinity from single women in the dating market. You're going to understand that that's actually a little bit appropriate. You just need to dig a little bit deeper, find out if that's her core identity or if it's just something that she's putting on to get by in life at the moment because she's waiting for a competent man to come over and take over. And I actually wouldn't be afraid to even explicitly ask about this. I don't think that this should be off the table in terms of, you know, date talk when you're getting to know somebody. Like, what do you want for the future? How do you imagine a long-term relationship with a man would look like? It can be particularly revealing to ask about her parents' relationship. Do not underestimate the power of those archetypal images that are still burned into her brain and her psychology from childhood. You know, The masculine and the feminine archetypes that she saw play out between her mother and her father can have a massive impact on how she perceives romantic relationships in the future. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that. I want to remind you that if you're enjoying Alexander Gray's content, the best stuff is hidden behind a paywall. If you need advice about your personalized dating life, your relationships, then you want to hit me up on Hey Hero. That's where you tell me what's going on for you and I create a personalized video just for you. Or if you want to test your knowledge of this stuff, you might want to check out my paid course, 100 Sides of Women. Features real stories, real men and women, real situations where you are encouraged to actually psychologically diagnose what's going on and then give advice to those people. You get a score out of 100. It takes 6.5 hours to watch the whole thing. It's very affordable. There's a video down below. You get a free trial. Check it out. See if it's for you. And last of all, I want to recommend my Patreon. That's where I post content that's not so clickbait worthy. It's not so good for the YouTube algorithm, but it's a lot more nuanced. Like this particular topic that I covered last week is really, really interesting one. It's the degree to which when you're in an individual relationship with a girl, how much should you be viewing her as a woman and how much as an individual? You know, should you be looking at gender for a guide as to how to relate to each other? Or is it more like that's just the basics and then when you get into the relationship, it's all about that individual? It's quite a long video. It's very nuanced. There's a lot of discussion there, but if that's the sort of thing that appeals to you, like you really want to sink your teeth into something of real substance, then you got to come over and check out my Patreon. I've got over 270 exclusive videos there. The value for money is absolutely extraordinary. It's only $7. I look forward to seeing you over there so you can be part of our community.